The schedule is out. 17 games. The Vikings might even win some of them. Let's break it down on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, a live edition this time. So thank you all so much for coming and hanging out. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to my hashtag everydayers for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. And thank you so much to everybody who is here live. You're going to have an important role in this episode of Locked On Vikings. You've maybe heard the phrase cupcake schedule. Well, I have a few cupcakes that my lovely wife put together, which is why this is a little bit later, that are maybe going to go directly in my face. So here's how this is going to work. Oh my God, they smell good. Here's how this is going to work. If you're on audio, okay, you're going to have to do your best, but I do highly recommend finding a way to get to the visual here. But there are a few teams on the schedule that are not necessarily as well respected as other teams. And we will go over all the games on the schedule here. But I have requested a couple of representative cupcakes to be made. And if you think that that is a cupcake game on the schedule, you just let me know, okay? And chat's vote will determine if I sully myself with this cupcake, okay? If you think it's a cupcake, it's going directly in my face because it's going to get blown up in my face anyways, okay? That is how this is going to work. So everybody get ready to participate because this is starting off hot. So the Vikings begin the season at Soldier Field on Monday Night Football. J.J. McCarthy's first NFL start is going to be in Soldier Field. So my question to the live chat is that a cupcake start for the Minnesota Vikings? The Bears are the lowest team on the Super Bowl odds and division odds and all that stuff. They're still seen as kind of fourth place. They got fourth place last year, so that kind of makes sense. But if you believe so, then this thing is going to go directly in my face, and it's going to be on my face for the entire time that I do this podcast. So quick OU on, there are 6 physical cupcakes here, by the way, for Ed the Hero. Monday night in Chicago doesn't follow normal rules. That is very true. Thank you, Left on Landon. But we have to remember that the Vikings haven't lost in Soldier Field in like 5 years. So we'll see if the J.J. McCarthy, Caleb Williams thing. I think the start for me here and why it's exciting to me is it's really a chance. If J.J. McCarthy outplays Caleb Williams in that game, boy, we can get real nasty. It's a cupcake if Ryan Poles has the courage. I am not seeing a consensus here. And because of the Soldier Field of it all, it appears that you all have not declared Monday night against the Bears a cupcake game. Maybe you'll get the cupcake on the next Bears game. Maybe it's just a Soldier Field thing, not a cupcake. Okay. Well, the next one is actually also one that I've made, or that my wife has made a cupcake for. It's the Atlanta Falcons, Sunday Night Football. So we got prime time right off the bat, and then 2 international games after week 3. So 4 of the first 5 games of J.J. McCarthy's career will be nationally televised with no competition. Except, well, I think the Monday night is a doubleheader. I think there will be another Monday night game on during that. But are the Atlanta Falcons a cupcake for Sunday Night Football? We don't know who the quarterback will be. It's currently slated to be Michael Penix with Kirk Cousins backing up. Probably that. Will Kirk Cousins even be there? What's it going to be? This is a little bit more controversial in the chat. I see a lot of people saying not a cupcake, yes to a cupcake. I think I'm seeing enough people calling it a cupcake for me to do this with the Atlanta Falcons. These little royal icing piped, very difficult to do. Atlanta Falcons. So here's to Atlanta. All right. That's going to be good. This is going to get really weird. All right, everybody. It's a cupcake game. So next up is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. That is not a cupcake. I did not. This frosting's delicious. The whole show is going to be like this. So everybody have a little bit of fun. The Cincinnati Bengals, the return of Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase stuff, right? Joe Burrow. The Vikings have did they play Joe Burrow once even? Because I think they've only played the Bengals once, and that was a Jake Browning game. So Joe Burrow's been hurt. I feel like there was another one against Joe Burrow, maybe to start his second game. But boy, this is a bigger mess than I really ever anticipated. Good luck, everybody. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to be a tough one. And then we go to Pittsburgh and then to Cleveland. So the Cincinnati game is going to be a tough one. It's a nooner. It's at home. That might make things a little bit easier, but my wife is here. Hello. Can you grab me a rag? Yeah. Thanks. Because I can't actually click the buttons I need to click. But anyways, yeah. So that the intrigue there, of course, is that. But that's two easy-ish games that look like the Vikings should be favored in two of their first three games, and then they go to Pittsburgh and or they go to Dublin to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. People asking what that is on my face. I think you missed part of the live stream, but I am gonna do this periodically. If you want to do one, my lovely wife, you may go ahead and have a little bit of fun and get some craziness on my face. So the question becomes, the Pittsburgh Steelers are in a pretty rough spot. We don't know who their quarterback is going to be. It could be the corpse of Aaron Rodgers. It could be pretty crazy. Are the Pittsburgh Steelers a cupcake? Is that going to be a cupcake game to go to London? And as a doubleheader, we also have the Browns coming up right after that. So are the Browns and Steelers cupcakes? Maybe we get two of these at the same time. But it is a doubleheader internationally. We talked a lot about that on yesterday's show, so I'll leave the analysis for that. But somebody said it's a pair of crumpets. Fun defensive battle, not a cupcake. Somebody says back-to-back cupcake. And the Browns, I'm waiting for chat to give me a sense for if this is a cupcake or not. Here's what I'm going to do, okay? We'll take a brief break, and then at the end, we'll see what you guys say about whether or not the Browns and Steelers are actually a cupcake. So that'll be next on Locked On Vikings. This absolutely unhinged episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. At FanDuel, you can, of course, get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm trying to get you out of here before the Wolves tip off. We're probably not quite going to make it. But if you do miss tip off of the Wolves playoff game, you may, of course, still make the same parlays probably, or whatever the live line is after the game just starts. But it's usually pretty similar. So whether you miss it or not, no sweat at all. And all of the live betting features on the FanDuel app make it super easy to make the right decisions. You get live scores, stats, etc. The Timberwolves in their game 5, you want to take a money line, maybe you want to take a Warriors money line, maybe you want to take a Warriors series money line as a quick emotional hedge, okay? I'm not going to judge you. I would respect it. Whatever it is, you can check it out at FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet. If that bet wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. I am sure that FanDuel loved that. So looks like I am seeing that people do not believe that the Steelers are a cupcake. So I'll set that one aside. But they do believe that the Browns are. Would you care to do the honors? This is the disembodied hand. Just get it. There it is. Yep. Well, we still have some of the brown. So we've got 2 cupcakes on the schedule yet. I'm going to leave that. That's beautiful. Brits call cupcakes fairy cakes. All right, so we'll call that a fairy cake because that one's going to be in London. Look, London is an equalizer. I don't know if you guys are necessarily right about that. I know the Browns have a horrible situation with their quarterback situation. Right now, Joe Flacco is the leader in the clubhouse. That's a disaster. That could be Kirk Cousins, by the way. They could be it could be an Aaron Rodgers into Kirk Cousins international slate, which would be a very fun it would be a very fun back-to-back of like Vikings nightmares from years past. A couple of things from chat. Sloth asks, when did you come up with the idea for this episode? It was my wife's idea. She wanted to make cupcakes, And also, the pun kind of makes itself. And you've been told to get in there crazy next time. So let's move on. The week 6 bye, week 7, you have Philadelphia. The post-bye stretch is pretty rough. You have Philadelphia after the bye at home. Then you got to go to LA on a short week. So you're looking at you're looking at like a very similar stretch to last year where you have this like tough home game against the Lions. And then 4 days after that, get beat up and then go have to play the Chargers on the road. They're no slouch. And then you have to go to Detroit the next week and then Baltimore at home. That is a nightmare stretch. That right there is the tough stretch of the schedule. If you can get out of that 2-2, if you start the season the way you're supposed to, because I honestly think the Vikings are going to be favored in 4 of their 5 first games. So you go into that 4-1, escape 2-2, and then you're like 6-3, right? And then you're feeling pretty good going into a stretch of a couple of divisional games where the Bears are back. Now it's the Bears at home, I believe at noon, regular time. And we have another chance to decide if the Bears are or are not a cupcake. I get it on the road on Monday Night Football, but chat's going to have to tell me if they are a cupcake. In the meantime, this is the first time we see Green Bay. Green Bay will have both of their games late in the season. It's going to be week 12 at Green Bay. So like November-ish, it'll be cold, but not crazy cold. Yep, they're saying cupcake at home. If you would like to, and I quote, get in there like crazy, this is why you're going to really want this. Just really get it. There it is. That's the one right there. Okay, that's going to fall for sure. Cleaning this up later is going to be really fun. But Nick Jelson says it'll be a 1-score game, of course. That doesn't mean it's not a cupcake, okay? The Vikings have made 1-score games out of the most cupcakey things in the world. But that's only the third one on the schedule, and we are well into November by this point. We go at Green Bay and then at Seattle. So we kind of come off that nightmare stretch. We get, I guess, a reprieve, according to you guys, with the cupcake. And then you have to go to Green Bay, to Seattle, and then play the Commanders at home. And then after that, things maybe can get a little bit easier. But where we get to like that first stretch, there is not one for the Green Bay Packers, by the way. Look, if you made the playoffs last year, you can't be a cupcake. Come on now. I guess I say that the Steelers did make the playoffs, didn't they? Weren't they like a broken? No, they didn't. They weren't a broken 7 seed. What am I talking about? Or did they? They played the Ravens, right, and lost. But still, I mean, you know what I mean, right? I like to break these things down in chunks, which is maybe an unfortunate choice of words for this one. But you think about that stretch of the first 5 games, right? You kind of have to get a hot start headed into them. You don't want to be like 1-2 going into international games with like pressure, right? You want to have a little bit of space there. But if you can come out of that first stretch where it's a little bit softer right away, and then survive that second stretch with this one, Chicago, Green Bay, Seattle, Washington, you gotta, again, I think to be a true playoff team, I think this is where the rubber meets the road, right? It's understandable if you lose one to Philly, if you lose one to Baltimore, those are elite teams. You want to look like you belong there, but if you start dropping them at Seattle against the Commanders, against like wild card sized teams from, when is Toyotathon? Actually, that's a great question. I don't know if week 12 or Toyotathon comes first, but that might be the beginning of the Toyotathon. A lot of people are saying that Flores is going to break Darnold again. I don't know. I by week 13, I don't know what kind of situation we're going to have. Also, I don't know. Deep bomb moonballs against like Isaiah Rodgers, that might be a thing. And who knows who's healthy by then or whatever anyways. And that's the thing about this. We're going to have a lot of time throughout the season, we're going to have 2 whole days dedicated to previewing each one of these matchups, but I am interested to see the at-home versus Commanders game. That's going to be another example of JJ McCarthy versus a guy drafted ahead of him, which we're going to have 3 or 4 of those this year, with 2 on Caleb Williams, a Michael Penix game, and then a Jaden Daniels game. So we get 4 of those this year. And those are going to be really, really keen ones, especially because those first 2 games are on prime time. So the whole nation is going to have its sense for who is who was the better draft pick, right? In terms of travel too, I mean, obviously the international twice, we talked about that. That's a big thing, but it also like Cleveland's going to have just traveled. They'll not have, they'll have been there for 10 days. That could be an advantage. But then you go from that a week later to the West Coast at Detroit, and then you go back to the West Coast later in November. Those games are always really difficult. All 4 NFC North teams have a bye by week 8. That's fascinating. I guess that means it's going to be a longevity game, and going to Green Bay when it's starting to get a little bit of cold out too. Although you don't have to go to Soldier when it's cold out, so I guess you get 1-1 there. I'll take that. But then you get to the final stretch of the season. So if the Vikings are struggling by that point, because that's a really ripping part of the schedule. Let's say they've fallen a little bit. Let's say that by game 12, so week 13 after that, or no, week 4, so 13 games in, and they're like 8-5, maybe they're like 7-6, right? And you've got a few games left to finish that thing up. Then it might get a little bit easier. And then we have to ask one more time, what is or isn't a cupcake? That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. So, time to make me suffer a little bit more. This comes to a stretch of 2 games in a row again against ailing teams. The Dallas Cowboys are both on and off the field having an absolute disastrous time. So there is a Cowboys cupcake, but you have to decide if this one actually counts and goes in my face. And then after that, we hit the New York Giants. Now, I have a feeling I know what you guys are going to say about this one. This is a team that just drafted 3rd overall and doesn't look like they're going to do that much better. But let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott, is he going to be healthy by week 15? That's kind of a huge question. And the kind of new regime there, and I don't know what the Cowboys really have going on. They did just get George Pickens, so they're going to have CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. That's going to be a good big physical group of of wide receivers. And I think just thinking forward to that one, honestly, small corners versus big receivers immediately comes out as a thing we're going to be talking about, as long as there's not a bigger injury thing or some other deal. Cowboys probably not a cupcake. Dallas we always have had trouble with. A couple people say double cupcake. No idea about that. I don't think you're giving me enough for the Cowboys, but the New York Giants, that's a cupcake. My dear sweet love, would you like to do the honors here? So moving on to the Giants, that's look, a little bit of the thing survived. Moving on to the Giants are surely in hell, huh? We're probably seeing Jackson Dart by then. That was one of my questions, was how late into the season was it going to be that we see the Giants, and will we see Jackson Dart? Will it be Russell Wilson still? I guess it just depends on what's happening with the are we sure 100% sure Pickens hasn't pulled an Antonio Brown and walked off the field shirtless by then? No, we're not 100% sure of that. The Cowboys always do seem to have something else going on, and it feels like every time we play them, especially when we play them on Sunday Night Football, this is I'm going to call it 6th primetime game, because I'm counting the international games as primetime because they're nationally televised, I guess maybe is the way to put it. It's, in the morning. That's not necessarily primetime. But the 6th nationally televised Vikings game, whatever happens to these Vikings, the whole world gets to see it. And if the Vikings are bad, if they aren't that exciting, or if Dallas is just a total disaster, this is one that I could see getting flexed out too. But of course, it depends on how these teams are. But whatever happens to the Vikings, it is going to be laid bare for the world to see. There will be nowhere to hide, because people will have watched a lot of Vikings games, especially coming up to the start of the season. Of their first 7 games, 5 of them will be nationally televised, and the other 2 are against the Bengals and Eagles. Those home games are going to be afternoon regular, but games people are going to want to watch. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is the narrative of the Vikings is going to be set really, really early. And especially if you want to talk about this from like a FanDuel perspective, right? If the Vikings stumble out the gates, let's say they've got a couple turnover things. JJ McCarthy needs a little bit. He doesn't get going until after the bye. He's got a couple of struggles, but he figures it out. And by week 9, he's got it down and he's starting to play better. The Vikings could get really, really underrated by this like early start of the schedule. Just because whatever struggles happen early is going to lock itself in people's minds. And it's tragic, but like that's what happens, right? First impressions are everything. It's even it happens every year with draft picks, right? Whoever picks first, or whatever they do first is in our minds forever. Trey Waynes played good cornerback for a while, but it took like 3 years for people to forget about the pass interference penalties he got in his first preseason game. Even though like in his second season, he picked off Aaron Rodgers to seal the US Bank Stadium's opening game. Like he was playing way better football by then. But it took people a while. It took people a while for Justin Jefferson. Remember, Justin Jefferson didn't play for the first 2 games. Even after that explosive third game, that breakout and stuff, people were still like, I don't know about if this guy's actually real or what's the young kid up to. Like we didn't really like it takes a while for people to believe it. And I definitely see that happening with these Vikings, with JJ McCarthy in particular, maybe even with Dallas Turner, with Donovan Jackson. Like, God forbid it takes a month for this team to get it together, to figure out the kinks. Like, that could though work out in your favor if you're a Vikings better. Is that guess what I'm getting at? They could be super underrated if they're 4-5 headed into a game against Baltimore. Or if they're 6-3, but there were a couple of close games in there where they got lucky headed into Baltimore. Unfortunately, we're out of cupcakes. Well, there's one more. It's this beautiful Vikings helmet that she actually made that actually is like 3D. It is very, very cool. Maybe we'll have a treat for that one in the end if you want to destroy it or not. I don't know how important it is to you, but the time-honored tradition of the Minnesota Vikings is ruining Christmas. And that's what's going to happen again. So they're playing on Christmas night. They're the second of a doubleheader. It's going to be the Netflix thing again. Vikings hosting Detroit on Christmas with everything on the line. Here's the thing. It's someone in chat said that's too nice to smash. Here's the thing. However bad the Vikings season could go, or however well it could go, there is a little bit of room to struggle in that kind of November-ish stretch where things get hard because they have a chance to get off to a hot start and then they get to end it with 2 at home in the division. So no matter how bad things are going, it takes a lot for 2 at home in the division to not getting to like that not being enough, right? You can be down 2 games and not have tiebreakers and still 2 games in the division will help. So there's a little bit of room. And that's just the way that things are going to play out, right? Like that home game always was going to exist. Of course, the opponents were always going to exist, which is why the like schedule release stuff is always kind of funny to me. Like I think a lot of people learn for the first time that we're going to play the Bengals at home. But that was always kind of written in the stars. It's just a matter of the order and when the tough games are, when the big travel things are, right? Like like the cold weather travel, right? The coldest game kind of figures, well, it'll probably be playing at the Meadowlands at New York in week 16, which for the Cupcakers, okay, that brought this one into my face, whatever's left of it. Hey man, cold road game might be kind of tough. I know that JJ McCarthy played at Michigan and he knows how to play in the cold and all that, but this won't be a team that is like super like that could be an equalizer, right? Cold game, week 16 at New York. But then the other road games are, week 12, that's Thanksgiving, Green Bay at Seattle, could be a little rainy, but that's not ever going to be, frigid -7. And then at Dallas, which is indoors. Otherwise, they don't actually have an outdoor game between London and Lambeau. So we're kind of dome patrol for a little while. That's kind of nice. It's just a matter, I think, of managing the travel. You're going to have this 4 of 5 games on the road stretch from going to Lambeau, going to Seattle, going to Dallas, going to New York. That is going to be a really, really difficult. Yeah, the Giants will be giving away medium Pepsis to season ticket holders by then. Yeah, true, Sloth. Yeah, maybe they'll be doing some stuff to make people to give people a reason to come to actually show up. But like, that is the kind of game to a team with probably not much to lose, maybe even interim head coach vibes. That is the kind of game you could blow. I was talking to the football party guys. We'll talk about this more on the show tomorrow about what the when is the team going to make you angriest and when are they going to make you happiest? And I think to that, I think the happiest they could make us is going to be going into that bye. They'll be probably favored in 4 or 5 of those games. So let's say they're 4-1 going into that. They just had an international trip. They win both of those games against the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. And that feels like a place where they could be headed into a game at home against Philadelphia where they can prove everything is real, right? That feels like the happiest you could get. And if they win that Philly game, that is probably their chance to do the thing that makes us the most stoked. But the angriest I think we could get is that Giants game. You got 4 or 5 on the road. It's a tough trip. You're going to be tired. You got Detroit coming up next. It's very trap gamey. You know, my trap game criteria is that it has to be a team that's like, you have to be favored by more than a touchdown, and there has to be either a really important game before it or after it or both. So that one feels very much like it could be trappy. But even if they blow that one, even if things go really wrong, you're headed into an at-home game on Christmas against Detroit, and then you're hosting Green Bay to end the season. If you can win those 2, you're probably headed into a situation where win those 2, you're in the postseason, or you maybe even win those 2, you're in the division, depending on how things go leading up to it, right? So I think that all in all, this has worked out pretty well for the Vikings in terms of schedule, their timings and all that stuff. There's a couple of tough travel things, but I am pretty grateful that the start of the season is where some of the softer opponents are, or the opponents who are supposed to be softer. I'm glad that they kind of have a little bit of a run up, especially because they're doing really difficult international travel. I'm glad that you're not kicking off JJ McCarthy. Like, it could have been like Eagles, Ravens, Lions, and like for the first 3 games. And then it's like, here's your good luck rookie, right? I think they were pretty nice to JJ McCarthy here. So I'm pretty happy with this. Tomorrow, much more serious things going on this show. We'll get back to the Everyman series and whatever other analysis you want. I'm going to go clean myself. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. And as always, Skull.